Inna Tokarev Sela, CEO and founder of illumex. Welcome to the Inside Jam.
Happy to be here. Nice to be here.
Well,
Yes.
I've been excited about talking to you because what illumex is doing in its own kind of terms is get your organization data generative AI ready. And if there's one thing that we have heard a lot of here is that folks are maybe not data ready. Tell us a little bit about what the opportunity is at illumex AI.
So when my employee come to me with a new initiative, let's say, I always say like, where's the numbers? Like, what's the hypothesis? What you're trying to prove? Like, what's the data behind that? And this is the same exactly conversation which happens across companies, across functions, across industries. And at this point of time where you have ChatGPT and other tools, for your homework, for your kids' homework, let's say, it's crazy that we don't have the same ability to have in our workroom environment. So what illumex does is actually to enable non-technical users in enterprise to have self-service data to access analytics, which is hallucination-free and governed. And it's a big statement to make, right? So a lot of moving parts here in the statement, and AI data is one of them.
Well, and the idea is to have your data sorted well enough so that you can then start to employ AI agents, correct?
Right now, what's happening in enterprise data management, and I have been around for the last 25 years, so I have been through a few circles and cycles. And right now, what we see is a lot of tackle aims in functions such as sales and marketing with more advanced modern data stack and maybe more traditional on-premise data stack for financial and operational functions. And all of this data is spread around, not aligned. And frankly speaking, you need to speak not with one human, but with a bunch of humans to understand and crunch those numbers, to answer your questions. So what qualifies data to become AI ready is what we call single source of truth. Single source of truth, it means, what active customer means. What upsell is meaning, what churn is, and where to find the data sources to calculate all of them. And they do not have different instances and different teams in organization unless it's by design, right? So single source of truth. And for that, of course, a few things should happen, alignment on those definitions, but also meaningful labeling of the data to find it. And just because you might remember from computer vision phase, a bunch of services labeling your cat and dog and dolphin and all of that in your images. And now we have to map organizational data and label it meaningfully to be able to find it and cater it to decision makers.
How do folks determine the single source of truth? I mean, where do you kind of come down philosophically around an organization thinking that this is it, this is the way we're going to organize and structure the data going forward?
It's a very good question. So single source of truth could be defined in many ways. It really depends on the culture of organizations. Some organizations are more consensus building, some more centrally federated. So of course there are industry benchmarks, so industry ontologies where different, for example, financial or retail industries define how semantic entities exactly relate to each other and what is the hierarchy. So lots of rigid definitions. Some of the industries more fluent. So one way is to go by industry standards, by benchmark. The other way is actually looking on existing usage, existing data usage, and understand what actually happens on the ground, what actually happens in practice, and say, okay, this definition is used by 80% of the use cases. Let's just standardize it as a common denominator for the whole organization. Or we might want to keep this upgrade definition different in every game in the gaming company, right? They might have different gaming, different logic between them, and we want to keep it different. As far as the industry is aligned or companies aligned on what they're going with, it's important to document that.
So the process begins with understanding what your data is, getting yourself into a single source of truth mindset, really getting all of your data sorted around that. But then what are the use cases you're starting to see with regard to how companies are now employing AI?
So if I speak about agentic analytics, what we see on the ground is actually support or customer success is the lowest hanging fruit because it's no-brainer. Companies do want to improve satisfaction layers, levels of the customers, and this is why they actually introduce a lot of automation, lots of self-service in those functions as well, and also it's a very expensive function of the company. So this area is prone to lots of innovation, and we see lots of cases in there. Especially around mapping different documents and policies. So for example, if you're insured by different companies, in California wildfires, imagine that you have chatbot and you can actually go and ask like what I'm eligible for, and then it goes to different policies and companies and actually provides you this explanation of what you should do and what's the next best action. So this is the ultimate experience companies want to provide to their users. Additional use case, of course, go-to-market functions. And again, here we go to this direction where this degrees of freedom might be big, right? So for AI, it might be wild west on one side. On the other side, is the cost of mistake is also lower, right? Than, for example, in finance. So this is where we see also a big trajectory for AI explosion as well.
And this to me is the kind of the conundrum of AI is that right now there's just, it feels like you can do almost anything, but sometimes that has a paralyzing effect where you could go in almost any direction. And you offer a platform. Illumix is a platform that allows folks to, it essentially strikes me as a set of tools. How do you help people kind of dial in building that first agent, that first implementation? I mean, where do you find that people tend to want to start?
Amazing question, because it's so timely now when we pass this initial frenzy, initial excitement, and now everyone is into details. How do I manage costs? How do I manage risk, right? Bias and IP and all of that. So this is exactly the time where companies are focusing on full stack. So it's not only having this agentic analytics for X, but having a platform which will enable to scale those cases. So not just one database table, but having my data lake being approached. So illumex actually takes this gradual approach to say you might want a plan for this agentic future. And right now, a step A, you're going to enable your data to become AI ready. AI ready means mapped, sorry. AI ready means labeled, mapped, transparent, searchable, accessible, and there's lots of insights how you can improve it. So for example, you don't want to put automation to a database, which is 70% garbage, right? So lots of insights about duplicated, deprecated data, all of that. So AI readiness is step, like absolutely fundamental step, right? Second step is actually governance. I believe governance is a cornerstone of any AI implementation, not only because of compliance, but because of trust. I do not believe that users in organizations are going to make decisions based on tool which is not governed, because then we're like, okay, so I cannot, it's a random answer. I cannot really put my career in the hands of this tool. And this is where governance is important, because governance actually to me means not only managing the access rights, but actually managing what is the boundaries of implementation. Should the tool be programmable? How much explainability should be provided to each users? What are the data distribution mechanisms that we should enable to make sure that the answers are correct? So governance actually creates this unified language between data producers and data consumers, technical people who actually implement AI, and business people who consume AI. Governance is kind of this collaboration tool, a collaboration environment which allows them to put guidelines and frameworks around how AI is implemented. Governance also is a cost governance, right? So should Inna be able to ask question, go through all my data sources and bring all people named Doug, right? It might be too heavy. It might be very expensive. So should it be able to ask questions like that? This is another type of governance. So lots of governance should be implemented, and it is for good actually to trust and be able to manage the whole implementation. And the third one is empathy. I call it empathy because right now we have lots of implementation of generative AI and chatbots, agentic analytics, what have you, and we see not user-friendly ways to push them to have this embedded in their workflow. So what I mean by that is I'm asking about how many customers do I have in Germany, and then I have answer 20, right? Where is explainability? Like, why did you calculate it? What's the logic? What's the formula? Why did you bring this number and not the other one? Which data source did you use? Whose the data source is owned by? So I want to know all of that. Same experience that I have with human analysts, I want to have with agentic analytics. And this empathy to me, because I do not expect end users to memorize questions I can ask, right? So this is the third part. Actually implementing agentic analytics for business users with empathy embedded.
You mentioned, particularly around data governance, you start to get a crossover of areas within an organization that begin to need to work collaboratively to kind of set standards around the governance, or have been working collaboratively to set standards around governance. It strikes me that the AI implementations that are going to be taking place over the next 5-10 years will be organization changing, revolutionary, as the power and the true impact becomes evident. Organizations are going to fundamentally change. So who in the organization are you finding right now is the customer for bringing in a platform? I mean, where is this being decided in your experience? Is it mid-level? Is it kind of hands-on, or is it more strategic and further up the chain of command?
We mainly see generative AI implementation as a strategic decision, and it actually makes me happy because I've been around for so long. We as technical people, we push machine learning and deep learning and all this cloud and big data around. No one cares, really. And this is the first time in 20 years in this industry where CEO comes to the chief data officer, our buyer, and says, John, I want to have ABC. I know it's possible because I just played with, I don't know, Midjourney and other generative AI tools. Like, I just want that. It's possible. I saw it works. Now I want it inside
on
the
Twitter.
company. Yeah, totally. But, it's a good thing because you have executive buy-in, you have business buy-in, and the same that happened to this internet business model have emerged, right? The imagination went wild, and the same happens with generative AI. So yeah, usually it's more executive initiative, it's cross-board, and it involves different functions. Our buyer is usually data leader, a chief data officer, chief data analytics officer. Now you have generative AI titles also as well. In more traditional financial services, insurance industry, it might be part of CIO organization. But we see more and more data organizations which either report to to business functions or directly to the C-suite.
So let's talk about the impact of this opportunity. So I've been through all the revolutions, starting with the PC revolution when I was a young boy. But I've seen the digital revolution, the internet revolution, the mobile revolution, the cloud revolution. I've never seen anything like this. This is a whole different animal. Is there a sense of anxiety out there that you're seeing, where it's like if you're not doing something, you're falling behind, maybe permanently, and that you need to? And there's almost kind of a kind of a broken decision-making process because you can't necessarily be completely thoughtful because you have to hurry up and get into this thing. I mean, I don't know. What are you seeing out there? Are organizations, are they either sitting on the sidelines and trying to figure out what to do, or are they rushing in kind of wildly without their data ready and without, I mean, where are you seeing the world right now?
I do not see companies rushing wildly without the skill capabilities. We saw some of the examples with $1 SUVs, of course, and airline tickets and all of that. I think those examples really brought a lot of awareness to all different industries. There are always more traditional industries like oil and gas and utilities will follow up. And there are more advanced industries such as financial services and retail, e-commerce, of course, who are just waiting to adopt everything which can bring them a competitive advantage as soon as possible. So this is a spread of different industries. No one really right now is ready to put their reputation on stake. So this is where the red line is drawn on one side. On the other side, after all those experiments in the last 2 years, C4 also draws another red line. It's like black line. All the spend has to finish unless we see clear ROI. So with clear ROI requirements, who is shaking are data people because, frankly speaking, data and data science people, because without AI-ready data, you cannot really have coherent results. And then you might want to have multiple tuple-ins. You can have this ginormous RAG systems, like the systems which customize generative AI to operational data, specific companies. So you have all kinds of bypassable scenarios which are super expensive. So when C4 says, I cannot have it expensive, I need to understand what's the return on investment, you start to understand that you cannot overspend to mitigate risks. So you need to be smart, right? And here, where architectures, platforms, committees, frameworks have been built. So right now, in this situation where more and more companies actually went down from the strategy to operational frameworks and implementations, whereas they already understand what's the trajectory, which will take them from POC on data sets to full-blown solution, which could be used not only for internal users, but also for external customers.
Let's talk about the broader implications here. So everything I'm seeing and everything that I've seen would indicate that this is not just going from analog to digital or from brick and mortar to online. This is something more fundamental than that. This is truly going to automate organizations and begin to have a genuine impact on not only the efficiency but on the staffing requirements and the way organizations think about how they deliver traditional services. What do you see is the kind of broader opportunity for an organization here, and where do you see this going in the next 5 or 10 years?
You rightfully mentioned that generative AI is evaluated not only as productivity tool for efficiency. Of course, we all heard about code assistants, copy assistants, all those assistants who actually draft you materials, so like your work, right? So you can augment your capacity with that. So this is efficiency use case. They exist, but this is not where companies see the biggest differentiation for them. Where we see is actually reinventing business models, providing new services, new products, which are purely generative AI based. For example, personal financial assistant, which embeds, from one side, all policies and, all existing tools which right now are available to be provided as advice. On the other side, they see all the trading data and they can say, okay, now we're going into. So this is something that companies, again, with all the guardrails, are very eager to start and doing more, right? To introducing new services. And this is the point, is to start generative AI and be left aside. exactly this FOMO kind of thing, and efficiency is kind of becoming a benchmark. So I bet, or at least this is a reality that we see from East Coast to West Coast. Every middle management department is requested to have the strategy how they become more efficient with generative AI. For example, cutting up to 20% of costs, right? So automating functions and so on and so forth. So it's kind of in parallel. Companies see more appetite or show more appetite for new use cases, new revenue engines. But for sure, the benchmark is already to have incremental improvement, and this is kind of required. This is given.
Let's talk about that. Cutting costs is a term that is fairly benign in its language, but it's what it really means is we're gonna not hire as many people. We're gonna potentially eliminate a whole department of people. Because an AI agent can now do effectively what a customer service agent or potentially even a financial advisor could do better, faster, cheaper. And ironically, the end user is going to prefer it over the human until, of course, they're the human that it's replacing. So I'm curious, when we talk about cost cutting and efficiencies, where do you see this going in terms of an impact on workers, and what can they start to think about in terms of becoming, I don't know, AI ready themselves to kind of compete in their roles?
It's interesting that you're saying that. I used to have those Uber chats where they were asking like what I do for a living, and I'm like doing generative AI. Until 2 years ago, no one understood that. I'm like, okay, so imagine that with computer vision you can automate autonomous driving, and with semantic models you can automate how commercial is written, or novel is written, like even more than that, and. Of course, they were intimidating and stopped chatting, and I got my phone time, right? Now, I actually have different opinion. I think, I see what we see is actually where companies and where the resources are put is actually augmenting more expensive jobs. So not necessarily the entry jobs or the blue-collar jobs, right? In focus to be automated, actually more expensive.
That's the irony.
Yeah. So actually, more expensive jobs are being automated or augmented, at least. And this brings us to the AI literacy, right? So we had this data literacy discussion forever, right? Data literacy programs and impact, and namely, you taught your employees to read charts, to understand visualizations, play with BI tools. Not very impactful, just because tools supposed to serve you, and you're not supposed to have, my job to understand how to work with different tools. So right now we have AI literacy or agentic literacy to be introduced. We just released a blog on that actually yesterday, and AI agentic literacy speaks about how to develop critical minds and agency to work with all those tools. What should you accept, what you shouldn't accept. So the levels of trust, which tool needs to provide you when you read and the answer doesn't resonate with you. You need to understand what exactly is wrong. You need to be smart about asking questions, not necessarily understanding data, but actually asking business questions, and it's up to tool to connect it to data. So be critical about how you understand the output of those agentic tools, and even more crucial, to understand how you convert them to actions, right? So decision-making and actions are more crucial part of our value as employees, as high-pay employees. And this is where generative AI is still, and it will not be very good for a long, long time to me, because there is simply not enough data to learn on decision-making and action-taking. It's not something which is very easy to pull from systems, right? So this is where we can keep our advantage and be creative about it.
But this is where I don't see how this ends well for humans. I mean, by putting agents on, I mean, by augmenting and enabling humans with AI agents and giving them these tools to be more efficient and to deliver more more work product. Isn't the agent essentially at that point just learning all the decision making that the human is porting back and forth into the system, all the questions it's asking, all the back and forth generative AI interplay? The agent is, as it should be, is absorbing all that as more data. All that's data. Every decision that is happening, every moment of time in that person's workday is data. What they're doing, how much time they're spending, how many emails they're sending, what they're doing all day long is part of the data set that the agent is absorbing. And it doesn't seem to me to be very long before the agent can effectively do that. There's nothing. I don't believe. Maybe I'm being cynical. I think we're all effectively just AI for all intents and purposes. I mean, we're large language models. We're only making decisions based upon everything we've absorbed over time in our large language model. We can't make a decision around something that we've never learned. We can only make decisions against the things we already understand and learn. And it won't be long before an agent can basically replicate us, our decision-making process. I mean, tell me where I'm wrong there. I don't think we're all that complicated.
I can share my opinion. Of course, we're not all special snowflakes, and this is why we even have business, because, otherwise AI will never scale. We do have a reasoning machine between those years, right? So your life experiences, your experience in certain contexts, which you apply to different contexts. This what makes you a better reasoning engine at the moment, the generative AI. I believe this is what actually separates us from AGI, right? This ultimate AI goal, if you will. So to me, it's very straightforward to understand, okay, in this specific context, this is the input, and this is a decision I made based on this input. So building reasoning around very small function or niche action is simple. But building this machine which understands the plethora of contexts and what made you to make this decision, it might be, okay, it's like, you might remember that Michael Jordan, he went to play baseball at one point. And he wasn't good in the beginning. But then he said that he wasn't good because he didn't apply his basketball practice. He decided to learn the baseball practice from scratch. And then he started actually to use his basketball experience, and he became like the trajectory was very, very fast to become more experienced, successful in what he's doing. And this is exactly what we're saying. We might have experience which are not directly directed to specific functions, which actually make us more likely to succeed. So for example, in sales, right? Sales, it's a relationship building. You might want to have generative AI, which before meeting says, your opportunity to expand this customer is in those use cases, and you should pitch ABC. So this is something which generative AI can already to some extent give you. What this generative AI doesn't know, that you might share a workplace with a specific prospects, right? And you can share like this experience. Do you remember ABC? And this is how we solve it with a solution in your company right now. We can help you solving that because we already have customers in this segment. So your ability to share and reuse contexts, not necessarily connected to specific decision making, and bring reasoning, which is not directly derived from very narrow scenario, to me is the biggest differentiation between AGI and generative AI, which we'll have for at least a foreseeable future. Very long
Well,
answer.
what is that? What is that? What is that foreseeable future?
Foreseeable
So you
future,
almost got there. Like 10 years?
15, 20 years, I guess.
Yes. This is where,
Yeah.
again, this is, to me, it's, I think and I hate to say these things because I consider myself reasonably, nuanced in my ability to make decisions, but I don't think we're all that complicated. I feel like, I mean, it's funny. I mean, for years now, we have had computers that can beat any human being at chess. And chess is a fairly complicated game with a lot of reasoning that goes on. You make a move, I make some set of moves,
Mhm.
and I'm predicting where that will wind up. And right now, humans can't beat computers at chess.
Mhm.
Now, I don't see how. I mean, most people don't know how to play chess. Most people aren't even able to get to that point. I don't see how. Again, I don't see how. And Michael Jordan is one thing, right? You can't teach AI to be, 6'6" and jump and dunk from the foul line. That's a different. What Michael Jordan had is a different thing completely. I agree, you can't replicate that. But if Michael Jordan were sitting in front of a screen all day long and doing nothing but, I don't know, data analytics, he would be easily replaced. But despite his airness,
So you're asking right now if data analytics is even a practice, right? And I agree with you. I do believe in application-free future where questions or tasks meet data, meet context, meet reasoning, meet application workflows and governance impromptu in non-modeled environments. So if I do believe that data analytics as functions will be as they are at the moment, I believe they're going to reinvent themselves tremendously. You can, in any conference you go, you can see that the BI and analytics space is shrinking, right? On expense of, for example, data management vendors, which are exploding right now. Again, and it speaks about something. So we might just run out of electricity before we achieve AGI, right? So all those things is expensive, having those billions, trillions, zillions of variables and the automated impromptu data model to answer your question is very expensive. So we need to understand not only how we do it in a governed way, that we do not ruin the earth, but also understands like what's the ultimate target. Of course, revenue making this is why companies exist, right? But there is also shared common good we need to take into consideration as well.
So let's. I think we're going to shelve that one because the idea that in a capitalist society, corporations are going to all of a sudden get a sense of altruism to a degree that it again helps them become more profitable. I think I sound cynical, but it's like capitalism is undefeated in terms of its ability to achieve its end goal of being as profitable as possible. And I can't believe that every organization that is looking at this isn't in the back of their mind, and it's ironic because it's coming for everyone, even the humans that bring it in, isn't looking at it as like, well, we can replace our entire customer service department with agents, or 80% of our customer service department with agents, and we would do that because it would be more profitable, right? It's not because isn't that it? Isn't that the point of why they would automate their customer service department, to make it to deliver better customer service and maybe even more complete and quicker customer service. But in the end, it's like to eliminate the customer service representative.
It's
cost.
It's ultimately to grow loyalty and increase satisfaction, because this is high degree to ability or willingness of customers to purchase your service over time, and eventually lifetime value. right? So the satisfaction is not necessarily correlated with full automation, right? So it's important to understand which types of services are supposed to be human driven and which types are automated. Airlines.
How
Yeah.
do you tell? How do you tell the difference? I mean, again, it's like we're in the early stages. This is kind of the Netscape navigator of AI, right? We haven't even gotten to where the internet has advanced in the first 25 years or so. I mean, we're nowhere near where we're going to be, but it won't take long before humans won't be able to tell the difference between whether they're dealing with a human or dealing with an AI agent, because they won't be physically interacting. It'll be digital. And how do you tell the difference? Or do you even care to tell the difference? I mean, I would argue that a lot of people would prefer, rather than the kind of standard these days, which, I think there's a running joke that, the agent is not in your country as you're dealing with it. It's been outsourced to some other country, and they're presenting themselves potentially as somebody else. And I think there's a sense that I waited online, or I waited on hold for this human to come on from some other country, and I'm unsatisfied with that. I think a lot of people would prefer quicker and more. I don't know. I don't even think they'll be able to tell the difference. And honestly, I think it'll be a better experience.
So for starters, would you be likely to pay more for human interaction? If you are, I'm sure companies are going to sell you one. If you are not,
So this is
it's
going
going
to
to be automated.
The idea, you're going to have handmade customer service. There's going to be handmade customer service, and then there's going to be kind of the
Would you like to pay for human
assembly line,
therapist, or it will be avatar? But putting this aside, there is a lot of research on efficiency of human interaction with avatar or digital interaction, even with Zoom and so on. So for example, for education, learning a new language, is a significant 40% difference in results which are achieved with a frontal communication with teacher which physically sits in front of you, whereas teacher who teaches you via Zoom.
Well,
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what customer service? Who in customer service is sitting physically in front of you, other than maybe a government in a government setting? I mean, when you're dealing with, by and large, in business customer service, you're never physically in front of anybody.
So
unless you're at a store, I guess.
So let's drop customer service specifically, but education, healthcare services.
Well, again, education. I mean, not to, but education is remarkably overpriced right now. Higher education is remarkably overpriced. I mean, that if you ask me, that industry is going to get crushed by AI, primarily because all they're doing is just regurgitating facts that they have that you want to learn, and the lecture hall paradigm, whether it's in person in a university setting or virtual, which I believe you can probably replicate fairly easily. There's nothing distinctly irreplaceable about that. I mean, these professors are ripe for picking in terms of I mean, they're nothing. They're nothing if not a large language model. They're easily replaced.
So
I mean, they're doing the same thing over and over again. I mean, it's almost like they should have been replaced already, and they charge an exorbitant amount of money.
I beg to differ on one aspect, not all of them. So especially during the last year, I have lots to say about higher education in the US and why to pay so much money for but the social aspects, the environment which universities create, which enables this dialogue, this brainstorm, this community of knowledge sharing, and it actually teaches you to take chances And especially, in advanced degrees and research stuff, which, might sound silly in the beginning. So I think the biggest advantage of academy is actually creating this environment for to being creative, for innovation, right? So this is the biggest factor. Not necessarily, transplanting volumes of knowledge or data into your brain, right? This you can do otherwise, but really teaching you to be critical thinker and challenging something which could be like perceived as truth. This is what the universities were famous for. Not all of them actually still have that. I must say many of them lost that for sure. And this is where I see is the biggest role. So think about Aristotle. It's the same. They had like this community of thinkers, and then mathematics came from them, and astronomy, and what have you. So this is where I see is the biggest benefit. And this is what makes us a human, because we do challenge if input gives output based on historical data, if it's still true. Like, this is where challenge is coming from.
I love it, and I do have I do believe that humans prefer to interact with humans. My concern is that we, since the pandemic, have moved so much toward this virtual interaction, this two-dimensional give and take, and we're so comfortable with it now, and quite frankly, so many people prefer it. They don't want to go back to the office. They don't want to deal with other humans face to face anymore. And with screens and the next generation coming up that hasn't known anything but screens, that there's going to be it's going to be hard to maintain a human to human model for almost anything other than perhaps retail, like brick and mortar retail, maybe higher education at the kind of graduate and above level. But I think online learning,
basics
and again,
are automated. Yeah.
The basics are going to get automated. Yeah. No, and I think I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. Again, everything seeks its own level. Consumers will decide all this. There'll be a lot of options presented, and the titans of this next revolution, we don't even know yet. The organizations that are going to emerge, like the Googles and the Facebooks and the Microsofts and the Amazons, we don't even know their names yet. They're yet to arrive, but they are going to be incredibly compelling. And I think I think the changes are going to be remarkable. But let's move on to while we have a few more minutes, because I'm curious about your journey here. So you've had a very interesting career. You're now CEO and an entrepreneur. But talk a little bit about how you ended up in technology to begin with, and some of the decisions that you made along the way that have led you to this point. I mean, what brought you to be a technology entrepreneur?
Well, it's a good one. It's long time dream for me, and I would say something controversial here, but I think it's something which is common for female entrepreneurs, that we feel that we need to learn more and get more experience to start our business and take chances. This is what I see as a common thread. Of course, it changes over time, different generations and all of that. But this is what at least I felt. I need to see how things are done to be able to reinvent them. And this is why I joined SAP for many, many years, as enterprise as I can get. And actually, I would recommend anyone to join enterprise, at least from my experience. You're giving this autonomy to build what you want. If you have enough energy to pay this extra toll of consensus building, right? So as entrepreneur, you need to convince your investors and your customers and your employees to join you, right? In enterprise, you have all of that plus administration overheads. So, what I learned at SAP is actually that data analytics as of today especially in enterprise, is very far from where small companies take it even yesterday. So, and this gap is not going to get smaller, it's going to get bigger if we still go with the same approach of a humanly curated, manually modeled data analytics practice. So this is why I decided to come out and build illumex. And in illumex, basically what we do, we automate context and reasoning for organizations automatically with humanly curated workflows. So as a human, you can curate that, but the heavy lifting of building knowledge and reasoning, context and reasoning, is not performed by techie people in the basements. It's actually performed automatically by the tools for you. And this, to your point, that the future of enterprise to me is on the business side, not on the techie side as competitive advantage. You have to develop your business cases, your business know-how, and then use tools to implement that, to help you implementing that. Companies do not become, unless you're AWS, you're Amazon, and then you become AWS, companies do not exist to become a tech savvy for the sake of being tech savvy. They became those tech factories to enable simple things, like, for example, provide you decent customer support, and they still couldn't. So enterprise was a great school to understand where to focus, and the idea to the technology came from academic background. I used to be neural nets nerd before it was in fashion, when you still needed to code them in MATLAB, so this long, and graphs as well. And to me right now, we're in this area where you connect context and content, your reasoning with this context, with data, and with applications with humans. It's super exciting. It's, to me, the new era where everything is possible, and enterprise is ripe for innovation.
So when did you know you wanted to be an entrepreneur?
Always. Well,
Always?
I was born in USSR. It wasn't very traditional career path, but yeah, it's
not a lot of VC investments going on in the
no, not really
in the Soviet Union.
Yeah, but it was evident, from the small initiatives that I ran. I mainly was in disagreement with all frameworks or controls which were put on me over the time, and this is, I think.
So you were thinking you'd like to be an entrepreneur even prior to whenever it was, 91, 90, 89, 91, whenever the whole thing started to come apart.
Well, I was a kid back then, and I knew that we are going to move to Israel to make our Aliyah, and it was a dream. We were not able to leave USSR till then, and then we were able to move to Israel, and it was liberating. Everything became possible. Everything became achievable, and I got my hands on Pentium 2, and it was exhilarating. I didn't have Mac back then. Now I'm a Mac person, but I was not born Mac person. So Pentium 2 was my first computer, and world is limitless. It's awesome.
So when you were at SAP, you were there for over 10 years, and you had many roles, including one I see further up the food chain, where you were director strategy of business development and go to market for a time. Is there, as you kind of offer guidance to folks who are trying to move their career through to a more entrepreneurial opportunity potentially, are there areas in an organization? I know you started out as an engineer, but you clearly went and got some kind of more hands-on, practical customer selling experience. I mean, what would you say are some of the decisions that you made along the way that you think helped you to become a founder and CEO?
What makes me excited along my career is to actually see how my company's products change the customer experience and make their life better. And for that, of course, I had to get in front of customers. So my first job was actually to deliver mainframes like in telco industry. So it was still when we didn't have cloud. And it was so empowering that even staying with this product and engineering organization for a while, I've always looked for outlets to become part of partner management and then go-to-market functions and then actually develop P&L for video analytics. Basically sitting with our strategic customers and together with them developing business models to turn around how is run business. So to me, if you want to be an entrepreneur, it's important to have both sides. So understanding what's possible technically wise and how get your customer to the point that it's possible, feasible on one side, and the other side, what's the ROI, why is it should be, where's the biggest why? So understanding both parts of why and how, this what makes to me the best entrepreneur. And spending so much time in enterprise and right now selling into enterprise market, I understand who is sitting in front of me. I understand what they're going through, understand what they need to pass to actually purchase my solution. And it gives me ability to facilitate this discussion in much more articulate manner on one side. On the other side, I also know where I want to see illumex as an end goal, right? So when entrepreneurs start, early on and start their own company, sometimes they have this imaginary glass ceiling and they say, okay, I will sell at 50, at 100, what have you. Like, this is enough and I will be serial and it's life-changing. And I have the utmost respect for them. My ambition to actually build a legacy business which changes at least our part of the industry and reimagines data analytics practice for the sake of business business function, I would say. And so far it was quite a journey. I really enjoyed that. I really recommend if you do have this bug in you, just go for it.
What do you look for as you're kind of building? We'll talk a little bit about your company culture and what you're going for. I mean, so as the organization, do you have an office? Do you have folks coming into the office? Are you virtual? Are you hybrid? I mean, how are you thinking about things these days?
So for starters, I don't have anything against coming to office again. I do think there's a social thing is very important. And to the evidence, the biggest technology companies actually bring the employees to office. illumex has a hybrid office work. We are a multi-locational, multi-continent company, and we are female majority. And I must say, still, my female employees have a little bit more load on their shoulders. And my employees are listening, so it could be embarrassing a little bit. But anyways, to be able to bring more diverse workforce to your business, you have to be more flexible about how you facilitate that. And this is North Star for me as a company culture, to understand what drives employees and facilitate the supporting work environment which can bring the most of them, but also encourage them to have those social interactions, which to me is also, of course, profitable for the business.
So how do you do that when you don't have folks coming into the office all the time? How do you get to that social interaction?
Integration events, we had lots of animation, and also something which I find is most stimulating is to attending conferences, industry conferences as exhibitor. It brings different functions, folks from engineering, from sales, and it creates these discussions and creates a spirit, and then you really have this cross teams collaboration. So really exposing them to where our customers are actually makes them more united as a company, right? As illumex.
Well, this has been a fascinating conversation. Inna Tokarev Sela, we appreciate the time today. Best of luck with everything that you're working on. I think it's just an absolute. It's going to be an absolutely wild ride in the next 5 to 10 years. I as you can probably tell by our conversation, I don't think this is a small pivot in the big technology roadmap. This is going to be massive, more massive than anything, and more massive than I think most people can truly understand. But we'll see how it all plays out. But again, thanks very much for the time, and best of luck with all of your endeavors.
Thank you so much. Buckle up.
Solutions Review is inviting you to join InsightJam.com. What started a few years ago as a social media event to celebrate enterprise technology has now grown into an always-on tech community with live events, discussions, videos, vendor showcases, and industry resources. Our vetted roster of experts, thought leaders, and analysts are sharing tips and tricks daily. So if you're interested in getting involved, join the long list of companies and brands who have already participated by visiting InsightJam.com today.